Over to you, Sylvie.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Today, we have another Sustainable Smart Home Special Interest Group. I'm Sylvie Russell, Head of Operation here at Cambridge Cleantech, and we have a few members of our teams here to help you today. Oriane is here. Some of you may have already liaised with her. She's been the main contact for that Smart Sustainable Home Interest Group. And we also have Satyajit here to help you with the Q&A. This webinar today is all about heat, and this is a great one. It's decarbonizing heat in the home, going beyond heat pumps. We have great speakers waiting to share with you all their experience and skills. We will have Q&A at the end, so please feel free to add all your questions in the chat, and we will look at them at the end of the session. We will also have a networking breakout rooms later on. So for the moment, what you just have to do is relax, use the chat to be able to introduce yourself and the questions, stay mute so that we can only hear the speakers. And yes, just share your experience whilst we are listening to the speakers. This group is facilitated by PGB Associates and Retrofit Works. And I'm delighted now to introduce you to Peter Bates, who will chair that session. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Sylvie, and welcome everybody to what I think is now the 8th online event we have with the Sustainable Smart Homes Group. If I just, I'll introduce the first speaker in a few minutes, and then each speaker will actually pass on to the next speaker of the event. I also need to try to keep timekeeping to make sure that most of the speakers will be speaking for around 8 minutes. If you have any questions, please, in the chat, if you can write the word question, and then if it's a question to a particular person, put the name of that person, speaker, and then just ask the question, because it makes it much easier for us to identify which is a question and which is a comment in the chat as we're going along. As Sylvia says, we will have questions and answers at the session at the end, and then after that we will have a breakout room where I believe you've already been invited to join a particular breakout room, which in effect simulates the kind of informal face-to-face activities that go on at the end of a break. Of an event in that respect. So just before I introduce our first speaker, if I can actually have a look at the next slide, and the next slide is actually just very briefly telling everybody about the Sustainable Smart Homes group, and I'm just having to remove some of the chat so I can actually see what it says on the screen. So Sustainable Smart Homes, it's been going for probably coming up to about 2 years now. Most of the events, as I say, have been taking place on, well, all the events have been taking place online, particularly obviously during lockdown. But the whole idea of the group is to actually look at there's something like the 27 million homes which are actually going to need retrofitting before 2050, so we can meet the targets set in law by government. So sustainable smart homes, sustainable, obviously. We're looking at smart technologies, but not just smart technologies, but we're looking at innovative solutions, which can include, and we're particularly hopeful, if anybody knows of any innovative companies who've got innovative construction materials, because we're looking at later in this year to have an event which will focus on that. And we're actually, as far as this group is concerned, we're focusing on just homes, domestic properties, not commercial properties in this respect. So if we could have the next slide, just a quick reminder for those people who have actually not come across, we have a LinkedIn group. If you go into LinkedIn, if you use LinkedIn, the easiest way to find this group is to not bother with the link, but just to put in sustainable smart homes, and it should take you to a link. It's linked to the Cambridge Cleantech SIG, but it also operates separately as well in that respect. So I'm not going to waste time because we've got a lot to go through today. So can I introduce our first speaker, who we're very pleased to actually have Matthew Aylott, who is the Senior Policy Advisor of BEIS, and he's going to tell us more about what is the current situation related to decarbonising in the home, and then what other new opportunities are going to take place. Just to emphasise, the whole of this event is looking beyond just heat pumps, looking at new other innovative solutions which are emerging, which may be more applicable in certain types of homes where a heat pump may be not applicable. So Matthew, over to you.
Hello everyone, so my name is Dr. Matthew Aylott and I am the Electrification of Heat lead in UK government. So I lead all our cross-cutting work to deploy, remove barriers to electrification of heat. So that's technologies from electric heat pumps all the way through to new emerging innovative electric heating technologies. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see hopefully my slides. Bear with me one second. Can people see my screen now?
That's great, Matthew.
Perfect, perfect. So in this presentation, I'm just going to cover a little bit about the heat decarbonisation challenge as we see it. I'll talk you through some of the government's targets for decarbonising heat, the key policies that we're adopting to incentivise cleaner heat technologies, and an overview of the technology solutions to decarbonise heating, including some of the novel and innovative technologies emerging on the market. So most of this I'm sure will be very familiar with to most of you on the call, but heating is responsible for nearly a third of our greenhouse gas emissions, and we've obviously got a commitment to decarbonise the whole economy. Meeting our net zero targets will require virtually all heat in buildings to be decarbonised by 2050, but urgent action is needed now to keep us on track to meet that objective. Given the diversity of buildings in the UK and consumer preferences, we think a variety of different heating technologies will be needed. That will include heat pumps, heat networks, and potentially hydrogen for heating, but we also expect there to be a role for other technologies like biomass, thermal batteries, and even direct electric heating technologies in specific situations. So just to flag, these are some of the technologies which might be suitable. So we've got a heat pump on the top left-hand corner, a heat network on the top right-hand corner, a hydrogen boiler made by Baxi that we've been funding and supporting in the bottom. There's also alternative electric heating technologies like some of the ones we'll be talking about today, including storage heaters, thermal batteries, dry core storage, boilers, infrared heating panels, and perhaps last but not least, biomass boilers in the bottom left-hand corner there. So what are the government targets for decarbonising heat? Well, this pyramid on the right-hand side shows you the kind of hierarchy of priorities. At the top of that pyramid is new build. So government expects to build 300,000 new homes each year from 2025. We want to ensure that those homes are future-proofed. So we've introduced regulations that will improve the performance of new buildings. So we've introduced the Future Home Standard, which will come into effect in 2025, but we also have an interim uplift, which gradually increases the pressure on housing developers to deploy more low carbon heating technologies and improve the thermal efficiency of the building stock. So we think those homes, those new build homes, are going to be particularly well suited to some of these low carbon heating technologies like heat pumps and alternative electric heating technologies. There's also the 5 million homes of businesses off the gas grid which use oil, LPG or electric heating, predominantly direct electric panel heating. We're consulting on introducing new regulations that will end the installation of fossil fuel heating for large businesses off the gas grid from 2024 and for homes and small businesses off the gas grid from 2026. This in practice will mean that when a fossil fuel heating system comes to the end of its natural life, consumers will need to replace it with a low carbon heating system as an alternative. And then finally, that big chunk at the bottom, the on-gas grid buildings, so the 24.5 million homes of businesses currently connected to the gas grid. We aim to end the installation of new fossil fuel gas boilers by 2035 at the latest. Even if parts of the gas network are converted to hydrogen, we still expect there to be a significant role for heat pumps and potentially alternative electric heating technologies within that space. So what are the key government policies that we've been implementing to drive forward this market? So ahead of regulations coming into effect, we're providing consumers with financial support to help them switch. So in October 2021, we launched our heat and building strategy, where we announced new funding of £3.9 billion over the next 3 years to help decarbonise buildings and incentivise the adoption of low carbon heating. So that includes £450 million for the boiler upgrade scheme to provide grants for installing heat pumps and in some cases biomass. The home upgrade grant, which allows local authorities to support low-income households insulate their homes and upgrade their heating systems. The Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, which provides funding for registered providers of social housing to improve the energy performance of their social homes, including by installing low carbon heating. And finally, £1.4 billion for the public sector decarbonisation scheme, which provides grants for public sector bodies to decarbonise their buildings. But there are wider initiatives and incentives to decarbonise homes. We want to move away from the blunt instrument, which is grant funding models, towards something that is more sustainable in the long term. So, for example, these are three areas that we're focused on, committed to reducing upfront costs of technologies. So we've already committed to reducing the upfront cost of heat pumps in our heat and building strategy by 25 to 50% by 2025. We're already taking steps to reduce costs of technologies by removing VAT on energy saving materials like heat pumps. We're injecting millions of pounds of funding into electric heating research and development through things like our Energy Entrepreneurs Fund and our Heat Pump Ready programme. We're also developing the market for green finance products such as heat as a service. As I said, we're investing a lot in improving fabric efficiency of our building stock. Some would argue we need to go a lot further, and I think that's a criticism of government, which is perhaps sometimes well-founded, that we could do more in that space. We also need to do more on raising product standards, and we're taking forward a big programme of work through our eco-design framework to promote and support more efficient products coming to the market. We also want to reduce running costs of electric heating technology, so we're supporting the development of smarter tariffs. We're looking to mandate that electric heating technologies are smart by default. And we're also seeking to reduce electricity costs by rebalancing some of the environmental and social levies which currently rest quite heavily on electricity bills. So what are the technology solutions? So we've touched on the three principal ones. So hydrogen boilers, we're currently trialling and demonstrating the feasibility of hydrogen for heating ahead of strategic decisions on the future of the gas grid in 2026. But we know that it will require repurposing of the gas grid, which is no small task. Hydrogen is a notoriously leaky gas, so we need to demonstrate and prove the safety case and upgrade the infrastructure as necessary. We also know that producing hydrogen, whether that's blue hydrogen or green hydrogen from renewable sources of electricity, could be quite costly to produce, and costs must fall rapidly for hydrogen to have a role in the decarbonisation of heat. Heat pumps are one of the principal technologies that we think will be used in decarbonising our building stock. Extensive analysis indicates that heat pumps are widely deployable and cost effective, and that's why we've committed to installing a minimum of 600,000 heat pumps a year by 2028, meaning around 1 in 10 homes will have a heat pump installed by the end of the decade. There's also a role for heat networks. So of course, in densely populated urban areas, there's a need for looking at these kind of communal heating systems. And in future, the heat in heat networks could also be supplied by hydrogen boilers, or it could be supplied by large heat pumps. So by 2050, we expect 1 in 5 homes will be connected to some form of heat network. But what about alternative electric heating? And we touched on it before. Alternative electric heating covers all manner of technologies, but principally we consider alternative electric heating to be thermal batteries, like dry core storage boilers, storage heaters, and infrared heating. And all of those technologies could play a really vital role in decarbonising heat. We've commissioned research previously looking at alternative electric heating systems. So we published the CODE report, the Cost Optimal Domestic Electrification report, which found that whilst air-to-water and air-to-air heat pumps were optimal in many scenarios, the cost differences, particularly in smaller properties, were very marginal, and alternatives could be a very viable solution in specific circumstances. In addition, we know that properties, not all properties will be suitable for a heat pump. Of the housing stock, we estimate about 70 to 80% might be suitable for a heat pump, but that still leaves a large chunk of the housing stock which will be unsuitable or less suitable for a heat pump, maybe because they don't have the space for an external unit or a ground array, or they may require expensive changes to heat emitters to make their home suitable for a low temperature heat pump system. And this is where alternative electric heating technologies could play a really important role. Alternative electric heating technologies may also offer other benefits too, such as greater flexibility to be controlled to operate on demand with very fast response times. They may be easier to install and lower maintenance due to the fewer moving parts compared to a heat pump. So we think they have a significant role to play. We're supporting them with further research through things like our Energy Entrepreneurs Fund, and we're also supporting deployment of some of these alternative electric heating technologies through trials, through some of our policy interventions that we're developing. So just a final summary. We need to decarbonise very rapidly over the next decades. I think that's a given. Improving energy efficiency, of course, underpins all of the actions we're taking to decarbonise buildings. We intend to take some strategic decisions on the future of the gas grid in 2026, but irrespective of the role that hydrogen might play, electric heating will have a major role in decarbonising both off-gas grid and on-gas grid homes. Electric heating can be cost effective and it is widely suitable across the housing stock. And as I said, we're putting in policies to support a deployment of heat pumps, but we're also considering the potential of some of these alternative electric heating technologies, which colleagues will talk about shortly. What we need to do more and what we need to do better, particularly as government, working with industry, is to reduce costs to consumers, support growth in the supply chain to enable people to install these low carbon heating products and build consumer awareness in these alternative systems. So I'll stop there and I'll hand back to colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Matthew. Let me try and share my screen now. That should work.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us here today. My name is Oussama. I am a member of the Heat Innovation team here at UK Power Networks. We all have a role to play in the decarbonization of heat. And as you will see here today, thinking beyond heat pumps is actually vital to reach out a low carbon future. That is why we were the first DNO to act on this when we released our heat strategy back in 2020. We worked with key stakeholders in the industry, and we have managed to identify our role in this journey. We then aligned it to 3 main objectives, which you can see on this screen. If you are familiar with our current ED2 plan, you would have clearly seen how far we have gone since this strategy came out, and how we are still pushing the boundaries of innovation on all fronts, especially the heating, which my team specializes on. The first objective revolves around informing policies, where we have worked with people such as Dr. Matthew to ensure a successful future is reached in an optimal way. The second objective would be our most valuable asset, which is the customers. How can we understand what they want, and then how can we streamline that journey? Last but not least is the network readiness, which clearly sits at the heart of it all, because that's how we will operate and we will allow this future. And our approach is clear on that front. We need to know what is coming, and then we can reinforce smartly. If you would like to know more in-depth information about our heat strategy, you can kindly scan the barcode at the bottom right of the screen, which would lead you directly to our heat page in our network. And I'm also happy to announce that our new heat strategy is coming out imminently, so definitely keep an eye out on that. Going on to our heat portfolio, if you can have a look at the donut on the right-hand side of the screen, it shows how the heat industry is going to look like in the near future. As you can see, there are various sectors that Dr. Matthew actually touched on already, but although they may have some commonalities, each sector will have some different challenges that identifies them from others. And therefore, we need to have some specific solutions targeting each of them to ensure that we go forward on all fronts. That is why we have a varied set of projects in our pipeline. Those aim to tackle not only the problems of today, though, but most importantly, all right, I was muted for some reason. All right, yeah, so varied projects to tackle various problems. I'm gonna name a few here for time. So we have community heat, where we are looking at to form a low carbon heating blueprint for off-gas grid communities. We also have Right to Heat, which aims to create a scalable template for social housing so that no one is left behind, which is very, very key, and it sits at the heart of our future plans. Neighborhood Green is investigating the clustering effect of having various low carbon technologies operating at the same time. And this is very important because now when you start thinking into how many low carbon technologies homes can have at the same time, you look at EVs, you look at heat pumps. Are they going to use a heat pump? Are they going to use storage heating? Various solutions. Each of them has a specific load profile. Each of them interact with the network very differently. And it's very important for us to understand how that is going to look like so that we ensure we are ready in the future. We have Emerge, which is looking to improve the customer experience, most importantly, streamlining the time required for a fuse upgrade, which is the key highlight when you talk about installing new heat pumps or installing new low carbon technologies in general. Usually you may require a fuse upgrade, and that's may form an obstacle for certain customers, and that is why we're looking into a way to streamline it and make it as a seamless experience. We have High Compact, where we are trying to form an understanding of compact hybrid units and the potential they have in decarbonizing heat. So not only electrical solutions, but we have hydrogen, which clearly is going to play a role depending on how the future show. And that's why we want to see how will hybrids play a role in our networks and how that's going to impact our optimization of the network utilization. Then last but not least, we have Smart Connect, which is already in operation, and it provides customers with an efficient way to connect low carbon technologies to our electrical network. This is a tool that you can access, and many people who needed to do anything, I'm not sure it's happening, but yeah, throw a drawing on the screen. Anyway, so yeah, it's a tool that's already on the network that can be used to yeah, to install low carbon technologies, and it's streamlined. It has various projects that feed into it to ensure that depending on what activity our customer is trying to have, they have an optimized experience that allows them to decarbonize in no time. A very high level figure, our portfolio at the moment exceeds £4 million, which only focuses on heating projects. And we can't do it alone. So thanks to innovation, our network are more ready than ever to support the low carbon transition. Heat decarbonization will play a major role in this venture, and tomorrow's actions must be done today. The projects I mentioned before, many others that we are already doing, as I said, we do not do them alone. We collaborate with people such as yourselves to ensure that we all go ahead together. Collaboration sits at the heart of our innovation plan, and we are always on the lookout for new ideas. If what I said so far ignited any interesting ideas, or if you already have a solution that you would actually want our help on taking it forward, please reach out. You can once again scan the barcode at the bottom right to directly access our Submit an Idea platform. And once again, we always are happy to hear from you. And that's me. I have put my contact details on this slide, so please feel free to reach out at any time. You can scan the barcode once again to directly connect with me on LinkedIn. And for now, thank you very much for listening. I hand you over to Phil from Octopus Energy. Great effects, great drawing effects.
Just before Phil speaks, Oussama, can I just ask you, can you just clarify what the role of the DNO UK Power Networks actually is? Because I'm sure a lot of people won't really know too much about it.
Of course, yeah, I've seen that, you know, the time frame, I wanted to kind of jump right into it, but I think maybe I should have done some introduction on that. So yeah, distribution network operator is responsible of the network that comes into your home. So we are not your energy provider. That will be Octopus, as you can see on screen, and we do not generate energy, but we maintain and maintain the network that gets the electricity to your home. So the most common interaction we have, especially with domestic people, is when you need a fuse upgrade or when your power goes off. Usually, if there's a fault on the network or if there's anything that's impacting the energy on the network, that's where we come in. So we are, I think one way to describe us is we are the facilitators that ensure that you have your electricity.
That's great, Oussama. That does clarify things. I'm going to pass straight over to Phil, who is one of the energy suppliers.
Energy supplier, yes. We're dependent on the DNOs to get the energy into the house. We're going to sell it to you, and we're going to sell it to you with smart tariffs. That's what I'm going to talk about. So, I've got control of my slides. Here we go. My name is Steele. I'm the Future Technologies Evangelist at Octopus. That means I look after lots of innovation, R&D, launch some of the smart tariffs, involved in a lot of the tech that we're creating and things. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of background noise. I got caught between meetings and had to do this externally today, not in a home world meeting room. So a little very brief bit about what Octopus is, because we've expanded. There's an awful lot of things that we're involved in. We're more just energy supply. So we have Octopus electric vehicles. We lease EVs, particularly under the salary sacrifice scheme that's running for a few years now. We've done things like Power Loop V2G, vehicle to grid. I remind myself I need to get the acronyms spelt out. Rather than rely on industry acronyms. So vehicle to grid, exporting energy from the car to the grid when the grid requires extra support. We've got a Centre for Net Zero under the decarbonisation heading. So that's exploring how we get to net zero over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Heat pumps, and you've seen in the news, we've invested in a company called RED, Renewable Energy Devices, with a likelihood of acquiring them outright at some point. And we have an R&D centre in Slough, £10 million investment into heat. Another arm of, or tentacle of Octopus Energy Group is the renewables business, where we manage something like £4 billion investment in renewable energy, and that's an international business. And then just the last one at the bottom, home installation services. So Octopus Energy Services, that's our meter installation business, also installs EV chargers and is installing the heat pumps as well. And I'm going to talk particularly about smart tariffs as I go through this. What you'll find, and what you probably know us for, is actually we are really a technology company. We've put a tremendous amount of investment into the underlying IT platform that makes Octopus, which is called Kraken. So the sentence there kind of is a mission statement, the nearest we get. We use technology to drive the global green energy revolution cheaper and faster for citizens and the planet. I'm going to go through how some of that works. For us, it's kind of like, how does an electric home work? We get customers off gas with heat pumps. We get them off ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles, and into electric vehicles, and encouraging things like rooftop systems, and how the Kraken platform and the technology power of smart meters allows us to make all this happen in kind of intelligent ways and integrated. So decarbonisation and smart tariffs on the left there, offshore wind on the right. That's my heat pump I took a photo of yesterday to put into these slides. And if you're looking at smart tariffs, you've got to look at what generation is doing, and you've got to look at what the demand in the house is. Now, an air source heat pump is a fairly flat, continuous demand. It's very difficult to kind of put a shape to it. And when you're designing smart tariffs, that gets more complex if you've also got an electric vehicle, and if you've got solar on a roof as well, because now you've got a lot more dynamicness that's going on with when do you want to charge the car, when do you need the car, and you've got a more flexible choice of when to charge that car, unlike the heat pump. Solar, completely dependent on the weather. Beautiful sunny day here outside St Pancras. Other days, not so sunny, typical British weather. But if you've got battery storage, then you've got a bit more flexibility as to when that solar generated energy is being used. I'm going to go through a few graphs, which kind of take another angle to this as well. I'm not going to ask the chat panel for who can guess what these two pictures are, but on the left is nuclear generation, very large scale, very few, steady, flat generation. On the right is gas, so there's a gas electricity generation. Here on the left is solar, and so solar generation. On the right is wind generation, and in the little corner map is offshore wind generation. So the big difference that you can see between these two sets of maps is it's highly distributed and actually very variable generation as well, as we move to an all renewable world. And that's the other aspect that we've got to manage alongside those things that you've got in the home. I took a screenshot this morning of the statistics on the grid. Now this was at 10 a.m. So I was coming to London this morning. You can see here, gas was producing 44% of our electricity, wind at 17%, solar at 14%. Now that's on the left. Sorry, the other map is planned renewable generation in the next few years. Huge amount, and this is just where we see that kind of change to very intermittent, very variable, distributed generation that the grid has to cope with. Just out of interest, I look back at some of the earlier data, and my screen is just in the pink at the top there. It says Storm Franklin back on the 21st of February. Extremely strong winds. We lost a tree in our garden, and we saw winds there generating at 42%, and fossil fuels right down in the mix of renewable generation. But that renewable generation has an impact on how the grid is being managed. Before I get to smart tariffs and things we're doing there, let's look at what we're doing with smart meters. Because smart tariffs depend on the rollout of smart meters. So we're not shy of 20 million smart meters connected in the UK now. About half of properties are connected, 12 and a bit million there. Claimed 99.3%. I hope Matthew's not going to kill me for this, but we still run into issues with smart meters connecting due to coverage issues and things. So although 0.7% sounds small, boy, it's customers in that 0.7 that kind of give us a headache when we're trying to get meters to work and deliver us half our data. If you want to know the difference between SMETS1 and SMETS2, ask me afterwards, so I won't go into on this call for now. So what I've said there is you've got intermittent and distributed renewable generation. The grid has got to cope and transport that, and we've got electricity demand increasing, something like doubling by 2050 when we move to all electric cars and electric heating. So we've been doing a lot of work over the past few years around smart tariffs, so whether that's the agile tariff, export, so excess solar, or just charging a car battery or a battery storage, the fan club tariff, our Go, and its a sibling set of tariffs called Go Faster, what we've done with Power Loop, which is the vehicle export tariff, the Tesla energy plan, so working directly with Tesla on optimizing battery storage systems, and more recently, the intelligent Octopus service as well. So just a brief look at Agile, for those who have not come across it before. Agile is priced per half hour according to the wholesale market for the day ahead. So in fact, the time right now is 4:30, so we will have just published the Agile rates for tomorrow. And customers take advantage of this tariff to, in this example here, charge a car at really low rates. And this was the 3rd of January this year. Everybody's saying, oh, the wholesale market's really high and Agile's not working. Actually, for some customers, it still is working. And in fact, on Easter Sunday, we hit 0 for half an hour ago, although through January, February, March, most of the time we have been near its 35p cap. Similar to the Agile import tariff, we have the Agile export tariff. So this is what we pay customers to export excess solar energy, again, priced every day based on the wholesale market. And this particular customer has solar, so we can see the purple bars around midday there. There's a kind of a bit of a curve there showing the increase and then decrease of solar energy. But they've got a battery storage system, or they might have an electric car, but I think this is a battery storage customer. And they've set that specifically to charge at 4 p.m. when the Agile export price went up to 20p or so. And that's kind of, this is enabling customers with these sorts of technologies like solar and battery storage. The Go tariff was focused on EV drivers. And so you get a 4 or 5 hour time period overnight, 7.5p, charge a car, and then a flat rate through the rest of the day. With Go Faster, we ran an experiment to see if we put customers onto different start times, could we try and even out the impact we were causing to the grid by suddenly having a very large number of electric cars all trying to charge from half past midnight in the night. And so the graphs there just show the blue lines, the blue bars are below the black line, that we were able to smooth out the grid. The point here, going back to my discussion of renewable and intermittency and variable and the demand side of things, is we're starting to get to the point where a grid needs to be able to, or the whole system needs to be able to balance everything that's going on. And so Go Fast was one of our attempts at that. The Tesla plan, similarly, this is where Tesla take control of the battery using price signals from us and are deciding when the home battery storage system is charging or discharging, as well as being topped up with solar energy. That means we actually have a matched price. It's about 11p import and 11p export, because we are using that battery to charge from the grid and then discharge back to the grid. It's a flat rate tariff, but we're deciding with Tesla when that is taking excess energy from the grid or putting energy back because the grid needs it. And then more recently, the intelligent Octopus tariff, initially focused on electric vehicles, so it probably expands to other services in the future. And this takes it to another level, and it's actually intelligently saying I'll charge the car that half hour and that half hour overnight, rather than just here's your full 4 hours or 5 hours of Go tariff. And so taking even more role in balancing the grid. And kind of related to that is what we've done with Power Loop recently, the vehicle to grid, where we're starting to put that, or we'll start to put that into the national grid ESO balancing mechanism as well. It's the first time that we see cars going into the balancing mechanism. Fan club, I mentioned.
1 minute, please.
A minute. I shall use my minute. So the fan club tariff, again, this is kind of looking at where energy is highly intermittent in generation from wind. How do we engage customers in behavior? Customers that are in a local postcode to 2 of our wind turbines get a 20% or 50% discount when that's turning, and they get access. This is the dashboard screen of everything that they get to see about their local wind tariff. And when you see what I've talked about there with Tesla cars and battery storage systems and things, there is a huge number of products and technology that are connected to our smart tariffs, and I know that some are going to talk about it later on today. So kind of summarizing all of this, tomorrow Octopus will bring the energy you need from your neighbor's solar panels, share the energy in your electric car with other homes on your street, and automatically heat water when prices are cheapest. And talking about heating water, I think I'm passing to James at Caldera. James, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen. And hopefully, if I go to this, yeah, So good afternoon. My name is James Macnaghten. I'm the CEO of Caldera. Thank you, particularly both Matthew and Phil, for the introduction. Matthew for explaining a little bit more about thermal storage, or heat batteries, as we tend to call them, and Phil for explaining a little bit about the tariffs that part of the way we look to operate by charging our units from off-peak energy. So it's been a really helpful introduction. Thank you very much. I always like to show this slide when talking about heating. Heat demand in the UK, it's 2.5 times our electricity demand. And it's sort of, you know, it is really the elephant in the room. For years, it's been sort of slightly pushed to one side because it's difficult. And some of the feedback on the sort of, you know, information I'll give a little bit later on the slide today is, you know, a lot of our heating systems don't work and its homes are complicated and it's hard to decarbonize them. But first of all, I always like to point out there's an awful lot of heat storage in the country already. Most homes have got well, I say most homes, maybe about 40% of homes got hot water cylinders. If we're going to fit heat pumps, that number is going to go up very significantly. So we've got about 70 gigawatt hours of thermal storage in our homes, and in total, the UK has only got about 30 gigawatt hours of electric storage. And also one of the other points sort of that Phil touched on, which is very good, which is, you know, there's a huge amount of wind and solar coming, and generally people assume that you want storage because of wind and solar. And the idea is that obviously when there's excess generation, rather than throwing it away, we can store it and use it. In a grid where you have gas power stations running, or we have thermal power plants running, storage really doesn't have a role. And we're really building our technology for the grid that's coming. And I'm going to show a few slides to sort of build on how much generation is coming, and particularly how much variable generation. But the other thing that I think a lot of people is they assume that storage is needed because we put wind and solar on the system. And I have lots of people that say we should build more nuclear power plants because then energy is available. But the reality is that almost all of the storage in the world was built because of nuclear. So nuclear can generate at almost no cost once you've built the power station. Come in the middle of the night, 1712 and 6 in the UK, people don't use much electricity. They wanted ways to absorb the demand, so they built storage by pumping water up a hill. So that was pumped hydro. And pretty much for every 4 gigawatts of nuclear power station, we built 1 gigawatt of storage. So I say to people, I don't mind if it's nuclear, it's wind or solar, all three of them will drive the demand for storage technologies. Now, moving on, this is some analysis that we've done internally, and we sort of based it on a paper written by Cornwall Insight. I'm not sure they're fully happy with how we've extrapolated the data, but we've looked at what the UK is going to build or was planning to build prior to the most recent announcement. And from that, you can work out fairly clearly how much of the annual generation is going to be from wind, solar and nuclear. And when we do our modelling, what you tend to see is that, not unsurprisingly, at low levels of wind and solar and nuclear, actually pretty much the demand is always greater than there. We've always got gas power stations returning up and down. The moment you get a surplus, suddenly the wholesale, it's shown by the wholesale price dropping to zero. And I think Phil's slide earlier showed it happened in January this year. It's happened a few times during lockdown, but it doesn't happen very often. But the big point is that you reach a certain point of renewables when actually you suddenly start to find that your renewable generation exceeds your demand on a sort of daily or semi-daily basis. And we sort of call it an inflection point. And in the UK, we're going to hit it within 5 years. And at that point, you're going to be looking at about, our view is 1,000 hours a year of zero wholesale prices. And because of the sort of vast amount of offshore wind that's coming, you know, if nothing is done about it, by 2030, you could have half the year with zero wholesale prices. And this is when storage becomes valuable. We're a source of flexible demand. Electric vehicles can provide this. Heating can provide this. Maybe heat pumps can provide this. But there's a limited number of things that are big enough to absorb the amount of energy that we need to. And just for reference, this is South Australia last year. 64% of its generation was wind and solar, predominantly wind, and they had 1,200 hours in the year when the wholesale price was zero. So it's not far away, and it's coming very, very rapidly. So we are really building a technology for a world where you want lots of large, flexible demand. And the UK, it's a great place to do it. We've got very low levels of interconnection with our neighbouring countries. We've got massive plans for offshore wind. We are pretty much the world leader, and I expect to stay broadly the world leader, certainly in size of the amount of installed offshore wind relative to our grid. And we've got a very ambitious government that's looking to decarbonise our economy. Now, going on to talk about, this is Warmstone. For those that haven't seen it before, it's got a solid core inside the steel outer cylinder. We heat it up to high temperatures, it stays solid. We put it inside, the steel vessel is actually a vacuum vessel, so we keep all the heat inside there, and it can sit outside your home, it can sit in a garage. This stores 100 kilowatt hours, and it can output power in the same at 30 kilowatts, which is the same as a boiler, and it can output at high temperatures. And we've designed this, we've designed it as our first product, and we've designed it for homes that are off the gas grid. They're generally older, larger, and less well insulated, and they're often difficult for heat pumps to tackle because you can't put heat pumps in that are necessarily big enough. In terms of the market, the interest, particularly interested from people that also want to put solar with this. So in the summer, you can store all of your excess solar and have free hot water all summer. Now, the 3 breakthroughs that made it work, the core material we've developed, and the core inside that unit weighs 1.3 tons and the whole unit weighs 1.8 tons. The vacuum insulation does a great job. It's hardly warmer than ambient when you put your hand on the outside. And then lastly, we needed, because it's very hot, we needed a safe way to get the heat out and into your home. So from a plumber or an installer's point of view, it behaves very much like a boiler, or in fact, it does behave like a boiler. It has a flow and return, you set a temperature and you let it do its thing. We are very pleased, we've been funded by the Energy Entrepreneurs Fund to put 12 trial units into homes. Here is just a number of them. It's been really good. I would say, first thing we've discovered is that most homes' heating systems don't work, particularly in older properties. That has definitely been more complicated. Real trouble getting installers in different parts of the country. And, you know, I've said it before, but if we're going to do the heat pumps, if we're going to do this sort of decarbonised heating, we need a massive training program to bring in more skilled people into the industry. There are just not enough people around at the moment. And I would say one of the other things that we discovered from the whole process is it very much depends on the homeowner can have as much of an influence as the house as to how much energy they use. I'm going to show a few bits of data, but I'll talk more. This is just a unit. It's, as I said, it's heavy unit, so we crane it into place or we move it on trolleys and we deliver it on the back of a lorry. Once it's in place, we need to connect it up to your main incoming electricity supply. It will pull very high current, so this unit can charge at 90 amps, which is pretty much the maximum that you can put on a single phase. And it will fully charge in 5 hours, which means that on an Octopus Go tariff, on 4 hours, you'd only be able to put 80 kilowatt hours into the unit. 1
minute, James.
Sorry? Oh,
1 minute.
Okay, I'm gonna run through. This was just one of the graphs. This was, we could compare all the homes we did. We kept the oil boiler so we could switch across and compare performance. This was an old oil boiler. It's actually a 40 kilowatt boiler, 68% efficient, won't deliver more than 26 kilowatts. And this is the same home running with a Warmstone. Peaks a little over 40 kilowatts on startup when it heats all the water up, generating 87, 88% efficiency. Length of piping runs into and out of the house can have an impact. But broadly, we're still expecting units to be around 90% efficient over the year. Just to say, follow up what's coming up next. In terms of homes, of the 12, about 6 can use 100 kilowatt hours in a day. The other ones need more energy. I think the largest user was using 300 kilowatt hours a day. So that just gives you a feel. When you go to bigger homes, the heat usage can be very, very significant. In terms of where we are at the moment, we've got a long way. So we're basically running a waiting list for anyone who wants one for their home. So I'm afraid I can't give anyone one soon. And we're also looking at developing an industrial unit for steam generation, which will be in a 20-foot container, and it'll be about 1,400 kilowatt hours. So thank you very much for listening. I'm very happy to answer more questions at the Q&A session and give any more details. And I think now I hand over to Johan from Tepeo, who is one of the founding members of Thermal Storage UK, which is our new trade association. Just stop sharing. How do I stop? Have I stopped?
Yes, all good. Yes. Johan, you're on mute.
Right, thank you. 1 second. I don't know if Oriana is able to share my slides for me.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Thank you. So I can start. My name is Johan. I'm the founder and CEO of Tepeo. I spoke at this event last year as well, so some of you may remember me. Sort of quite a complementary product to Caldera in many ways, although we are looking at smaller homes. So Oriana, if you could sit to the next slide, please. So I'm going to skip the broader context setting around heat, because I think that's been done already very helpfully, and focus instead just primarily on our product. So what we've developed at Tepeo, we're calling a ZEB, or a zero emission boiler. And this is a plug and play replacement for a fossil fuel boiler, oil or gas boiler. Typically they take about a day to install. And technically what you'd call this a dry cool thermal storage boiler. It's designed for use in wet central heating systems. And there are no changes required to a heating system to do this. It works with all sorts of heat emitter types, including things like microball, which are particularly difficult for heat pumps to tackle. The unit is about the size of a washing machine, although it is a bit taller, and it weighs about 375 kilograms. It basically stores energy in a solid thermal core, much like the Caldera units, and charges at a rate of 9 kilowatts, and stores about 40 kilowatt hours of thermal energy. It then discharges that heat into any water circuit, into your central heating, into your water circuit, at anything between 35 and 80 degrees Celsius as set by the user, at up to 15 kilowatts. Every ZEB is then connected to our back-end IoT infrastructure. So we've got a really strong emphasis on IoT and machine learning. And we're using machine learning to optimize the charging of each device based on carbon, costs, and user preferences. Every device is able to then self-consume solar renewables such as solar PV. And they have high accuracy metering and ultra-fast frequency response built into them. Remotely, with all of the data coming back, we're then able to do lots of diagnostics and condition monitoring. And if there ever is an issue with the device, we actually know well before the customer will ever know that there's a problem. We've got a patented heat management and release system, and we currently have a regular boiler, which is now on sale in the UK. We're prototyping a combi version, which we hope to have available by the end of next year. Although that is still a way away, so that is the target we're working to. If you can skip to the next slide, please. So don't normally show all of this, but it is an illustrative diagram here just to help explain a little bit more about how it works. So on the left-hand side, you can see sort of in terms of the hardware, inside the unit, we have a fan at the bottom. This blows cold air up through a chimney, which is basically embedded inside the thermal storage core. That air is heating up as it rises through the core. It then spreads out at the top and works its way down through smaller holes and gets even hotter towards the bottom where it collects. It's then blended and blown over a heat exchanger, and that's how it's imparting that energy into the water circuit, which then goes out into the home. So this is just illustrative, but hopefully give you an idea a bit about how the product works. As I said before, each ZEB is then connected to our IoT platform, and we receive well over 100 data points, actually, different types of data at least 1 second resolution. Some are much finer resolution for things like frequency and power monitoring. And then we're using machine learning to build a really accurate forecast of the heat demand in each house, using all the historical data, as well as things like local weather forecast, and particular user trends and the way people use their heating in their particular home. And that's really supported by all of the data points and all the data that we have streaming from the ZEB. So the bottom right hand image is really not supposed to be read because it's far too small, but really just to illustrate some of the graphing that we get in real time from each home. This is for one particular home over a 24-hour period. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to focus on particularly today was just to give a little bit of an answer to an often asked question about how we compete with a heat pump when effectively we're using direct electric heating. And what I like to, the sort of analogy I like to make here is, a heat pump has a COP, or coefficient of performance, and a ZEB has flexibility. So really we're pitting those two against each other. Heat pumps are a brilliant technology, as others have said, we should be installing as many of them as we can. But we find that in many cases, people are not able to install them. I think Matthew said that even Bayes thinks maybe 75% of homes. Anecdotally, we see from heat pump installers that sort of 50% of surveys might not end in a heat pump installation. And the question is, what are we going to do with all these homes? And at the moment, it is kind of being swept under the rug and not really dealt with. But back to sort of ZEB flexibility. So as I said, flexibility pitted against coefficient of performance, and ZEBs have enormous amounts of flexibility on them. 40 kilowatt hours is about 3 and a bit Tesla Powerwalls in terms of chemical battery storage. There are EV tariffs out there, such as one provided by Octopus, which today has a ratio of 4:1 between off-peak and peak pricing. So you can sort of at a high level see there how we can compete with a heat pump which more or less has a bit of flexibility, but generally will be run on a flat rate tariff. And so we can compete with the COP of up to about 3, which, heat pumps are brilliant, and you do get quotes for much higher COPs, but in practice, the data we see from actual usage is typically not that high. And what I've done here is given, sorry, if you come back for a quick second. So what I've done here is given a little bit of a high level breakdown of how the annualized cost of ownership of some of the different options looks. And this is really, this example is based on a 12,000 kilowatt hour heat demand. The median home in the country uses 12,000 kilowatt hours of gas. So it's a little bit lower than the median home, assuming some inefficiency on the average gas boiler. But actually for smaller homes, the point we're making here is that the annualized cost of ownership, this is without air source heat pump subsidy through the bus scheme, is actually very comparable with a ZEB. And we're particularly in smaller homes, we know that people have a lot of issues with finding outside space or inside space, or needing to change the fabric of their home. And that's where a lot of the demand is that we're seeing for ZEBs. And I've included a lot of the assumptions that I've used down there because, as I'm sure all of you would appreciate, there are lots of factors at play here, and tariffs is a big one in particular. So I've stated everything that I've done back down there. And last slide. I'm just going to keep it brief. I think it's been brief. So last slide is really just to say your customers love the product. We've started selling ZEBs in December last year. So it is now, the regular boiler is now available in limited volumes throughout large parts of southern England. But I should stress limited volumes. We are growing our installation network to cover the rest of the UK over the next 12 months. Oussama wanted me to mention that he forgot to mention we are shortly to be working with UKPM as well on a project within their regions to install about 30 units. And we are in the process of scaling up production capacity. We are heavily production constrained given the amount of interest that we've seen, and about to kick off our next investment round to support future scaling as well. So I think that's all I had for today. Thank you very much. And I think I'm passing over to Sal.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much. My name is Salvatore, and I'm the Managing Director of IntelliHeat. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okie dokie. IntelliHeat is a company, one manufacturer. We started 20 years ago. We started manufacturing electric radiators and web app. Yeah, web app 20 years ago. Based on Zigbee Pro, we was able to manage 1,500 radiators connected through the web. Thanks, first of all, Peter, for this webinar. Thanks, Oriane. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for the beautiful share so far. Cleaner heating, of course, is less CO2 emission. As we already stated, 39% of the greenhouse CO2 emission is from heating. And we understood that years and years ago. And what we did as a manufacturer, So here there is a slide, low carbon heating is, of course, is the recommendation for the government to replace gas and oil system. 70% of our housing stock in UK are properties that are built before 86. Now, the heat pump, they are a perfect solution. I don't think there is a perfect form of heating. I mean, it all depends about the fabric of the building, and over the last years we have learned that every property, you can specify a different heating for every property. So there is not one form of heating, there is loads. But those are the suggested steps we took as a manufacturer. We're just some simple manufacturer, but those are the steps we took over the last 21 years. Number one, we enforce eco-design law 20. Number two, we applied and we are in contact with BRE for recognizing new technology in the new SAP 2012. Number three, intelligent heating control. Number four, accurate heating zoning. This is crucial. Number five, heat or renewable. And of course, six is a life cycle thinking. So it's sustainable technology to build those radiators. Number one, enforcing eco-design law 20. This is a very old legislation that came in force in 2018. Basically, all over the world, Europe, especially Europe, they decided that, it was completely silly to have an analog thermostat or to have no idea about the room temperature. I mean, when we first started 20 years ago, and people was asking, what sort of temperature have you got in the room? And no one was able to literally say that, identify the comfort temperature, the background temperature. So we decided to integrate all those features inside our products. So all our products, they comply, of course, with eco-design. The Law 20 is the most important part of the eco-design legislation. One, you need to have an high currency temperature control within 0.1 or 0.2 degree, depends about the radiator. Adaptive temperature control and eco-start functionality. Programming, 841 to 922 by the minute, 21.5 degree. Bearing in mind that 1 degree, if you set up your comfort temperature 21 instead of 20, is a waste of £70 a year per radiator per room. Smart open window technology, presence detection, real-time energy consumption for each radiator. Self-programming, that's a nice one. Self-programming, basically you put your program in, you run away, you go to work or holiday, whatever, and the radiator and the app will automatically learn your lifestyle and adjust the program accordingly to your lifestyle. Roughly the economy that our clients, they made is 35–40% in comparison to storage heaters. Built-in Wi-Fi, again, is not a gadget. Be able to control remotely your system is an energy saving feature. Cost-wise, yeah, heat pump they're great, between £9,000 and £13,000 up to 24 if you got the money. But I think the bigger challenge here for local authority community is not the new build. New build, I think, we are okay with new build, it's not a big deal. I think is try to retrofit the million of property that they've got storage heaters, oil or LPG. So what we did in a property, what our British clients, they did in a property, they replaced all the LED lights. So they've taken off 1.2 kilowatt, they've reduced 1.2 kilowatt on the energy consumption, they spent 300 quid. They've changed all the white appliances, they're all A+++++++, another 2 kilowatt of saving, but they've spent £2,000. They've installed a brand new shiny shower, A++++, and they save another 0.8 kilowatts, but they've spent 700 quid. The point I'm trying to make is basic, is that, yeah, they've saved 5 kilowatts in terms of energy efficient appliances and LED lights, but they've spent £3,800. Now, the big chunk in a property, and we see, as a manufacturer, we work with installers. So we're in touch with clients. We talk to them every single day. And we've noticed that normally they call us to replace those storage heaters. And the storage heaters, they are 20 kilowatt in a property, approximately. That's a big, big chunk. 20 kilowatt is a lot. IntelliHeat, our system is roughly about between 6, 7, 8 kilowatt max. But because of the technology, because of the way they've been built and designed, there is an element in the bottom is going to warm up the fluid. There is a triac. We're going to calculate the flue electricity every second. In average, they use 5 kilowatt an hour. So it's a total saving. The UK, well, a household, just a normal house, produce 2.7 tons of CO2 a year. That's quite a bit. Now, as I said previously, our customers, they save 35% in comparison to panel leader, storage heater, or low LPG. That's 1,000 kilo of CO2 a year. This is a screenshot of the Sense, My Sense app. Is a cloud-based app. Someone mentioned Internet of Things. We've got our own cloud. You buy the product, you install the product, it's going to automatically suggest the best provider, energy provider. If it's Octopus, it's fine. It's just going to tell you the Octopus in your area is the best energy provider. It's going to connect it automatically with Google. It's going to connect automatically the system with degree days. So he knows that your postcode is IP270 Alpha November. He knows the amount of degree that you need, and he's going to suggest a program for each radiator, not for the entire house. So if you've got 100 radiators in a property, every radiator's got a different program, a different building, and you can individually control each radiator. The second is the SAP methodology 2012. We have a look at it, and the appendix Q on the database, it mentioned only one brand of electric radiators. I don't want to mention because you know the brand. They've got the monopoly in UK. And I think it's a bit sad that we cannot offer the customer, the British public, the choice. You got 1,000 boilers, you got 1,000 solar panel, you got 300,000 heat pump, but only one electric radiator.
1 minute.
SAP 2012, advanced intelligent heat control. Yes, we think that the future is there. Is having all this feature and control, open window detection, presence detection, eco design control, automatic programming. It's the most important part. It doesn't matter which system you use, you need to zone your heating. Each room needs a different temperature as each human being. Someone wants 21.2, someone wants 15.5. Number 5, heat on renewable PV. All our radiators, of course, have been designed to work with photovoltaic. And our last creation, creative radiators, are our eco-friendly radiators. They are built with recycled marble. We collected 5 tons of marble, dust marble, and we created creative radiators. So in real terms, they are forged from 100% recycled marble and produced using eco-friendly cold technology. They are radiant heat, and they can be used in any form, any shape. They are all connected through the app on the cloud. So there are viable alternatives to fossil fuels. There are different options outside there. It all depends about the property, really. You know, if you live in a 2-bedroom flat in London, I don't think you can fit a heat pump, but there is a low carbon electric heating solution that can be used. Thanks for your time, and of course, any question, just feel free to ask in our Q&A. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sal. That was great. And can I thank all the speakers for their presentations today. We're going to go on to question and answers in a few moments, but I think hopefully this event so far today has actually kind of highlighted that there are alternative solutions to heat pumps. It looks as if government is beginning to think of alternative solutions, and maybe there will be some grants available, particularly in the future. I'm not quite sure, but hopefully that will happen. And I think the key aspect of all this is that it's flexibility in terms of electricity tariffs to make that possible. So now I'm going to pass on over to my co-chair, which is who's Warren Beatty. Sorry, I get that right. Warren Pope, who is going to deal with the questions and answers. I see that we had several come in today. So over to you, Warren.
Right, thank you very much. Matthew, if we could start with some questions for you, please. Question one is, why was there so little about demand reduction in the recently launched energy strategy? Did it not come across more as an energy supply strategy rather than an energy strategy? And that's from Sean Fitzgerald.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for the question, and thank you for putting me on the spot, Sean. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that there was a great deal of focus in the energy security strategy on supply rather than demand, and I think that's a criticism we'll take on the chin. I think what we need to do in future is try and focus more of our policy interventions around that demand reduction. But we have already committed over £6 billion during this Parliament. As part of the heat and building strategy, we committed £3.9 billion over the next 3 years, which will drive not just reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, but also driving energy efficiency measures to reduce demand in the home. So we're trying to do our bit, but I absolutely accept as government we can do a lot more, and I think watch this space is what I will say. Over the forthcoming months, we're likely to produce more detail and substance on some of the measures that we'll be taking. So watch out for that in the next few months.
Right, Matthew, we have two more questions for you. And the question is, how will the at-scale installation of heat pumps, etc., be synchronized with the at-scale installations of building fabric improvements? That's from Rosalie Ryclover.
Sorry, you cut out halfway through, Warren. Can you just repeat that?
How will the at-scale installation of heat pumps, etc., be synchronized with the at-scale installations of building fabric improvements?
Yeah, again, I mean, it's a good question. I think what we're trying to do through a lot of the policies that we're introducing for heat pumps and other low carbon heating technologies is to make sure that they're only installed in homes which are fit for those products. So we're putting minimum requirements in around wattage heat losses for those systems. We're also trying to take a fabric first approach in some of our policies, like our social housing decarbonisation fund, where we're incentivizing people to install energy efficiency measures first before introducing any reduction in the sort of supply side of heating. So I think we're trying to be more joined up and trying to deliver a sort of coordinated approach. But again, I think there's a lot more that we can be doing as government to try and coordinate and bring that together.
Right, and the final question for yourself is, and it's from Roy from Mattamy in Canada. What can you share regarding changes to the grid to prepare for the additional capacity requirements as homes and buildings decarbonise?
Well, I mean, perhaps that's a question for colleagues at UK Power.
Happy to take that.
What I will say is through our Rio ED2 price control framework, we're incentivizing the DNOs to basically invest in the networks and prepare for the electrification of heat. Predominantly, they're taking a sort of smart first approach, so trying to do more in the home before upgrading the network and doing some of those more expensive interventions. We're also doing a lot of work as government, across government, with both ourselves and Ofgem colleagues to try and incentivize people to move towards smarter time of use tariffs. So we're looking to introduce over the next couple of years half-hourly settlements as standard. We're looking to introduce greater access to time of use tariffs, aggregated demand services, sort of those system balancing services, which I think will reduce demand by incentivizing smarter use of electricity. So I think we're trying to do our bit to reduce the impact on the electricity network, but we acknowledge that we're probably with the electrification of heat and transport, probably going to be doubling or maybe even tripling demand on the electricity networks over the next 30 or 40 years. So we have to do more to try and incentivize smarter grid management and smarter use of the assets that we have. But yeah, Oussama.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's exactly that. So in the near future, we're already doing it. We're actually transitioning from being just a distribution network operator. We ensure, maintain the network and ensure that it's operational, to a distribution system operator, where we have a large integration of distributed generation, demand side response. There is a role for everything in our network, and we need to work together to ensure that it all works in harmony, so that you don't keep building and upgrading with very limited utilization of the network. So it's a whole systems approach that we will follow to ensure that the system is optimized. And if the person that asked the question can have a quick look into our innovation portal, you can see how exactly we plan to do that in the near future.
Right, Oussama, don't run away, because I've got two questions for you.
All right.
Will the installers of heat batteries be required to be part of a competent person scheme, and/or will it become a technology under MCS? That's from Graham Heron.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of specialists here that will probably be able to answer that question better than me, I believe.
I was going to jump in, and I was just going to say, in response to Graham, it's a good question, and we're looking at minimum technical competencies for all electric heating technologies, and principally that will be introduced through building regulations alongside the introduction of the Future Home Standard. So we are certainly looking at that quite seriously and trying to ensure that there's a consistent approach to quality and consistency of installation of some of these products. At the moment, it largely focuses on installation quality around heat pumps, because heat pumps we expect to be the predominant technology. But as these alternatives emerge, even though, as I said before, they're generally easier to install and perhaps lower maintenance, we do need to ensure that we're delivering the installations to a significant quality standard to avoid any of that sort of first entrant into the market disadvantage by perhaps penalizing people who are taking that early initiative to install some of these alternative electric heating technologies. We need to ensure that they have a guarantee of a good quality installation, so we don't have any of the sort of negative press that perhaps we did in the early days with heat pumps. So there are lessons learned there from previous experience that I think we need to take on board.
Do you mind if I jump in for a quick sec? Just to add to the comments from Matthew, I think some of it's about installation quality, but I think the bigger challenge is actually around heating system sort of optimization and competence. And I think that's an issue for any heat source. And actually, we see that as much of a much bigger problem to tackle than purely the way that things cable to the electrical system. So, but yeah.
Right, now the next question was aimed at Oussama, but I think, Matthew, it might run between you and Oussama. And it is, why is hydrogen still being considered for heating homes? If one considers the ultimate source of energy, hydrogen needs a lot more energy generation, e.g. wind turbines, than electric with heat pumps. Is there openness about this fundamental problem? And then it says, this is why electric plus heat pumps are so helpful. And again, that's from Sean Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think as part of all the presentations that we've seen today, it's evident that, you know, heat pumps have a major role to play in the decarbonization, but there is still a level of uncertainty, and that is why we are investigating the solutions, some of the brilliant solutions that our presenters have shown today. So we need to, from a DNO perspective, we need to investigate how the future is going to look like and ensure that our network is going to be able to handle that, because different characteristics. So you have hydrogen, where it's going to be in a central location, very high load, and then you're going to transmit it to the network, or we're going to have distributed load that's going to be operated in a smart way. And we need to be ready for whatever kind of I forgot the word, but, you know, whatever combination those net systems are going to have. Over to you, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably give a politically correct answer, an official government line, but perhaps I'll also give a personal perspective. I mean, the government line is that we're committed to assessing the feasibility of hydrogen for heating in view of making decisions about the future of the gas grid in 2026. My personal opinion, and a lot of the modelling and work done by ourselves and the Committee on Climate Change, suggests that hydrogen may indeed have a role to play, but costs of production are going to be very high, and we need to do more to reduce the costs for hydrogen to be a viable solution. And my personal opinion is that hydrogen is much better targeted at sort of industrial processes where they need the higher temperature heating, as opposed to sort of lower temperature systems like heat pumps, which are perhaps more appropriate to the domestic residential housing stock. But there may be opportunities locally for co-location of hydrogen heating gas networks around industrial clusters. So there may be specific use cases where hydrogen is going to be more viable than an alternative. But my personal opinion is that hydrogen has a very big uphill battle to levelize the cost to the extent where it's an affordable solution for most consumers.
Right, thank you. I've been told we've only got time for one more question, and yet we have loads. I'm just trying to pick one. We'll go for this one. A question for Phil Steele. How is the electricity grid dealing with the growing number of homes that are adding solar panels using net metering, where the power can be sent back to the grid? What sort of grid upgrades changes are needed? And that's from Roy K.
Good question. Just clarify, net metering, we don't net meter, rather when you export, you have a second MPAN added to your meter, and we measure the export, so we don't net off what exports against what imports. Someone might have some answers on this as well, because actually it's the DNOs, distribution network operators, that decide the limit and whether a customer can export or not, and that depends on the local grid constraints. If a particular feeder is under stress because there is a large amount of renewables perhaps on that, it does cause interesting issues, because when solar is exporting, it actually pushes the voltage up slightly, and so you start to get kind of voltage issues on the grid with a lot of renewable going on in the particular. And the same way with EV chargers, it works the other way, and it can pull the grid down as well. So this all has to go through proper processes for connecting to the grid. I can't really comment on how the grid will cope with that. It's like
I feel inclined to kind of comment on that, right?
Some you've done something to add. I can see
yeah. Yeah, so it's really related to the first question we've asked, right? So we are, when we convert to a distribution system, we're gonna see a lot of this, and one of the solutions that are presented on screen, which is Smart Connect, is actually looking into this kind of obstacle specifically.
Sorry, did I freeze in the middle of that?
Ish. But yeah, so it's one of the solution presenters is Smart Connect is actually looking just into that, into ensuring that, you know, the variable options that we would like to connect to the grid are made possible. Some of them are, you know, if we do an assessment, if you can connect directly, then you would be able to. If not, then we can assess some variable solutions, because not always an upgrade is not always the ideal solution to have and the most optimal one. We have, depending on the circumstances, we have solutions such as flexible connections and timed connections, and as I said, the last, not necessarily the last resort, but one of the solutions is obviously upgrading the feeder. So there are multiple options in play, and depending on the specific circumstances, we can have one approach or a combination of multiple.
Right, thank you very much. Oriane, shall I hand back to you?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So first of all, thank you to all the speakers for the great presentation and the great quality of your talks, and for all making it on time. And so now we're going to move to the next student, which is the breakout rooms. So most of you who have registered have requested to meet a specific speaker or a specific type of speaker. So that's already, for those of you who have mentioned that, that's already been done for you. So let me share my slides where you can see the rooms. So these, these are the rooms.